Hello, my name is Ben Ofori-Amoah, and this is my story. I was born in a small town in Ghana on the coast of West Africa. I was born into the Methodist church of my town. As far as I could remember, my parents had stopped going to church, but my older siblings were still very active in the Methodist church. So I tagged along and became a member of the church. At elementary school, and I studied, part of the things that I studied was religious instructions, which was essentially Bible knowledge. And I continued to do that as one of the subjects that I had to study to write the standard test to get to admission to the university. So I really knew the Bible. I knew the Bible well. It was called Bible knowledge, and I prided myself as somebody who knew it very well. However, all my life, during all those days, I was gripped with fear because my family, the maternal side of my family, was also the royal family of the town. And in Ghana, the royal family is usually the people whose ancestors founded the town. So my ancestral grandmother was the one who actually founded the town I was born in. And by that virtue, I was part of the royal family. And as a royal family, it was the custodian of all the traditions and rituals of the place, and they made sure that everything that had to be done right. There were so many rituals, and for each of those rituals and laws and traditions, if anybody violated them, the person was required to offer a sheep and as well as a drink as an offering to pacify the spirits. So there was a lot of that that was going on. Now, the part of the fear was also due to the fact that I was in line to become the next chief. And that prospect became greater when I became the first person from my royal family to go to the university in 1974. So when I entered the university, I was really, really afraid that something bad was going to happen to me, part of it because of all the rituals and the stories that you grow up with under that circumstances. So one day in February 1975, I met a young man who introduced himself as the president of the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And this young man invited me to attend a week-long crusade that was being organized by the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. This was the last day. It was a Friday, the last day of the campaign. The speaker of the week-long activity was Festo Kivengere. At that time, he was the Archbishop of Uganda. And so he had come all the way from Uganda to Ghana to be the speaker for that 1 week. I agreed, I accepted, and I went to listen. But I cannot remember a single word that that preacher said. The reason was that I knew all of that, and I was only waiting for one moment. I was waiting for the altar call because my heart was ready. And I was just there waiting for the altar call because I had seen so many people do that at similar meetings, but I had never done that. So as soon as the time came for the altar call, I was the first to go forward. And at that time, I gave my life to Christ. So that began my new life as a Christian. Now, before this time, myself and my brother and a couple of friends, we were the shakers and movers of our town. We were the first generation to go to college, and so whenever we returned, especially during Christmas time. We would organize record dances, play the DJ. We will also introduce the latest genre of music, dress codes, dances that mostly were coming from abroad and into the capital city, and we will introduce it into the village. So everybody would be expecting us to do something. But in 1975, the Christmas of 1975, God had a different plan. It turned out that the time that I had accepted Christ, another friend of mine had also accepted Christ in his college. Now, in the royal family, I've already said that I was the one in line to become the next chief. There were two or three more important people in the family. There was the chief, who was the leader of the town, of course. There was the head or the presiding elder of the family, who actually was the kingmaker, the person who would appoint the new chief, and the queen mother, who was the next in line. So the presiding elder and the queen mother had the power to remove as well as install a new chief. And then the third person was the speaker. The fourth person was the speaker of the royal family. So what happened was that I had become a Christian. My friend Anthony, who had also accepted Christ when he was at college, around the same time that I became a Christian, was actually the son of the speaker of the royal family. So when we met on holidays, Christmas holidays, we had a different thought. Instead of organizing those dances and other things, we decided that we will go for an outreach. We will go to the town and do preaching and talk about Christ, the real meaning of Christmas. Our friends were shocked because everybody was expecting us to do the usual thing. But so over the next year or so, we kept doing this, and the small group, we started getting converts. And it didn't take long that we had a lot of young men and women who were either in their teens or early adulthood, and they started joining us. And one of the converts was actually going to be my future and current wife, Agnes. Within 2 years, this group, the town fellowship, we call it a town fellowship. We established it as a town non-denominational fellowship. And what happened was that word started getting around throughout the county as we heard that some other young people were doing the same thing in nearby towns. So we teamed up with them, and we started embarking on outreach, evening programs. We go to the various towns and preach, and by doing that, we got converts, and we started spreading this non-denominational fellowship around the area. So over the next 2 years, as the group became large, Anthony and myself, we realized that we actually needed somebody to become the leader for that group. And so we started praying about it. And one day we were at a meeting, and when a young man called Peter came into the meeting. Now, Peter was an alcoholic and somebody who was always drunk. He could never walk straight. As far as I could remember, Peter was always drunk. And so when he came into the meeting, everybody in the meeting there started laughing because we were not sure what he was going to do. But Peter sat down and he asked Anthony and myself. We used to do a lot of things together. But over the past few years, when you came home, you have stopped doing this. And the other thing I could see from both of you is that you seem so happy. But for me, I would just drink, get drunk, and as soon as I sober, then whatever happened was that day, I will feel a very deep sense of sadness. So I came tonight just to find out what is it that you, two of you and these young people have found that make you so happy, because I want to experience that. Now, Peter, just like Anthony, was a member of the Roman Catholic Church, has gone through all the rituals and was actually a mass boy. So he asked this, we were glad, and we shared the gospel of Christ with him. And by the end of the night, he decided that he would accept Jesus Christ. So he knelt down, he accepted Christ, we prayed for him. And that was the last time I saw Peter, or anybody saw Peter drunk. It was just like a night and day. The following day, Peter started attending our meetings. And then he accompanied us to the outreach. And when people saw him with us, people were just beside themselves because they thought Peter was joking. Nobody understood what dramatic change had come over Peter. But then when he stood up and began to talk, his whole life was enough testimony. He didn't have to convince anybody, and people saw the change. And as they saw the change, more and more people joined the group. So, the time came that we have to go back to school, so we went. But in 1977, that's about 2 years or so later, the university students all over the country revolted against the military government at that time, and so the government just closed down the school, and we all went home. And this was the time that really I had a lot of time on my hands. That was where my spiritual growth really began, because I had time to study and read the Bible again with a new eye, because at that time I was a Christian. And I could understand, there were things that I knew in the Bible I didn't understand, but now the Holy Spirit was guiding me into it. So it was a great time that I can look fondly of. So what happened was that it was by this time, Peter, before let me just backtrack. Before we left for back to school, after Peter became converted, we felt that we needed somebody to take care of the group. And so a week before we left, Anthony and myself left, we decided that we will bring this before God, and we prayed. And at the meeting, we were led to lay our hands on Peter. And as we prayed for Peter, he started speaking in tongues. And we got the assurance that Peter would be the person who would take care of the group. So when we came back, the government closed down the school, and I came back, and Anthony came back from his college and everything. We had all this time, and that was when we decided that we will do something about the idol worshiping that was going on. Now, you have to understand that Peter was my uncle, my family uncle, and he was in direct line to be the next elder of the royal family. In other words, Peter had the power to remove and install a new chief. When it came to my turn to become the chief, I would need him to support me, else my chances to become a chief would not be. So there were three of us. Peter, who was the kingmaker, in line to be the next kingmaker; Anthony, who is the son of the speaker of the royal family; and myself, who was in line to be the next chief. And all of us became Christians. And so if there was anybody, we were the next generation of the carrying on the traditions. And we decided that it was about time to challenge these rituals. Now, one particular festival that really used to be very, very serious in my town was that it was a spirit, it was a water spirit that was worshipped. And it took a 3-day, it was a 3-day festival, once a year, starting from Thursday through Saturday. There's a ban on making noise. There's a ban on going to work in the farm. There was a ban on going to the river to fetch water. And so everything had to be quiet. The other thing was that the chief and the members of the royal family, the elders, will not eat salt until the Saturday. So the festival started on Thursday and ended on Saturday. On Saturday, they will go to the river, go to a shrine, slaughter a sheep, pour libation, offer some drinks, and then they will do some sacrifices and rituals, and then they will come home. And that it was after that time that the ban will be lifted. If anybody violated this, you were required to provide a lot of a sheep without blemish, and a bottle of schnapps as a drink offering to pacify the spirits. If you refused, the punishment was that within a year, some major incident, including death, would occur to the person who refused to do the rituals. So this was the situation. So we planned that at that particular festival, we are going to break the law. Before the festival, we went to the shrine and took every paraphernalia of all the shrine, all the things that were there. We took everything and threw them away, and we challenged the spirit that if the spirit had power, it can come and attack us. But before we could implement the plan, I had to leave the village, the town, and I had an errand to run at the capital city. So I left for the capital city. But the group that stayed behind with Peter and Anthony and the rest carried out the plan. So in the night, when they were supposed to be quiet, the group had an all-night prayer, playing drums and singing, shouting, making noise. So the following day, the chief, who was my brother at this time, called the group to the palace with the elders. And what happened was that the elders charged the group for breaking the law. And as a result, they had to offer a sheep without blemish and a bottle of schnapps to pacify the spirits. So at that point, Peter stood up and said that Christ has paid that bill for us. Christ was a sacrificial lamb, and his death took care of all those. So the group, none of the group members or the group will not do any such thing. Now, this was blasphemy coming from a royal blood and somebody who was in line to be the chief custodian of the traditions. So it was something unthinkable. The chief and all the elders, they tried. So finally what he decided to do was that he would use some threat. So he called the nearest police station, and the police officers arrived in the town, arrested the leaders, and took them to jail in the nearby town, which was about 10 miles. The entire group followed the leaders there, and went and held a prayer vigil and preached to the entire town for the whole night. The following day, the police chief came out and confessed that, well, I don't know why these young people were brought here, so he set them free. By the end of the evening, I had returned from the capital city, and when I got back, a lot of elders called me and scolded me for what was happening, and begged me to go and plead so that we would do the pacification. I gave them the same answer as Peter had given them, that we are not going to do that because Christ has paid that debt for us. And then they said, well, you young people are playing with fire. You are going to be dead within a year. And we told them that if any of us perish within a year, then the God that we were worshiping was a dead God. So we refused. So a year came by and went. Another year passed and went. Nothing happened. And then, after a while, my brother, who was the chief, stopped doing the festival. And another interesting thing was that the chief priest of the spirit, the chief priest who was doing all the rituals, was actually the person that my wife, Agnes, was named after. Traditionally, we have traditional names, and so her traditional name was for the spirits. So the chief priest also realized that, well, if the chief was not doing any festival, then why was it that he was doing it? So he decided to go back to church and reclaim his faith as Christian. As time went by, Anthony finished college and went on, left the Catholic Church and joined the Church of Pentecost and became a pastor. All the young people that were converted during our outreach and in the nearby towns and the counties, almost all of them became pastors. They went into, mostly in the Church of Pentecost, but other denominations to become pastors. Peter became the presiding elder for the Church of Pentecost in town, and eventually became the regent when my brother passed away and they were looking for the next person to become a chief. They contacted me and I told them that at that time what was happening was that a few elders felt uneasy, and so they wanted to bring back those rituals, and they were trying to actually do the rituals, and they blamed the death of my brother for the fact that he stopped performing those rituals. So they wanted to reinstate the rituals, and I told them that, well, if that is the case, I wouldn't have anything to do with it. So Peter became the regent while they were looking for a new chief. They installed a new chief now, and they're trying to bring back all those things, but it's not going well. So, do I have questions? Yes, I do. As Pastor Petrowski raised the other time, I have a lot of questions. And for me, these questions are actually made worse because of my academic and career background. I'm a geographer, an urban planner. And anybody who knows a little bit about geography, we spend a lot of our time looking at distributions of things, name it, poverty, diseases, health, prosperity, all kinds of things. And if you spend your whole time looking at distributions, you see one thing clearly, that is disparities. You see places of despair, places of prosperity, places of hope. And the question is, why? If God is God of all people, why do some people suffer so much and other parts of the world do not? So I have questions. But how does that affect my faith? It actually strengthens my faith. And so what I would say is that, and I have to read this, what we have seen, what we have heard, and what we have done, we give testimony that God is real and there is power in the name of Jesus Christ, because they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, as stated in Revelation 12:11. For if the blood of goats and bulls and ashes of heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them, so that they are outwardly clean, how much more than with the blood of Christ? And you can continue that in Hebrews 9:13-14. To conclude, I'll say this. I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. Galatians 2:20-21. And that is my story.